Yeah, I took some notes and now they're all over the place, so it's a bit of a mess. So I'll try and come back as much as possible. Yeah, the point on nationalism, I think that's really important. Like all types of nationalism are completely abhorrent, and it's actually it's British nationalism that's really forced me initially into voting for independence. And I think the No campaign represents the worst aspects of British nationalism, and so does the Queen. I think like radical independence, like some of like our demands around the Queen and Trident, is about getting rid of relics of British nationalism and trying to put forward a progressive new vision where these things don't exist. That recent, like the Olympics, royal wedding, upcoming royal baby, that flag waving of the Union Jack is a sickening reminder of what the Union Jack stands for: war, imperialism and slavery. So what else? The stuff about the left, like who are we going to vote for? Yeah. Well, this is the thing. Like it's kind of based on what Pete said. Like in November, we had a conference in Glasgow of 900 people, the Radical Independence Conference, and that was people from like across the left spectrum, lots of different parties, maybe parties that would have had old, like kind of bad blood between them, kind of like old frictions or whatever, but everyone came together and discussed in workshops the way forward for Scotland and for the left. And I think we do need to have something that's born out of the Radical Independence campaign. Like, I mean, what happens if it's a no vote? Do you know what I mean? There needs to be still some progression, some new force, some new left force that is outwardly socialist. And I mean, like openly socialist, that has a connection to the movement on the streets, that has a connection to communities all the time, and it's always, you know, based in grassroots politics. I think that's really, really important. I think we need new representative leaders, and I think we need new female leaders. You know, we need people from different parts of the community. And the point that was brought up about refugees and asylum seekers, I think that's tied up in the stuff around British nationalism, because where I work, I don't work for local government, by the way. I probably shouldn't say where I work because I'll get the old heave-ho for being here and for talking. So yeah, like refugees and asylum seekers, so many of them are fleeing war-torn areas, areas of famine, of drought. And see, when you actually scratch beneath the surface and you see the role of British-American alliances that played a role in creating war and creating instability in their countries, they must be welcomed. Everyone needs to be welcomed into New Scotland, and I'll always campaign for that, as long as even if we're part of the UK. What else? Finally, yeah, just there was a kind of anecdote that popped into my head just on lots of different questions, and it was about like the Yes campaign and the SNP and things like that. And I went to a lecture. It was the Jimmy Reid Memorial Lecture that Alex Salmond spoke at. And it was, the title of it was Alex Salmond Speaks on Alienation, and it was like a reference to Jimmy Reid's really famous speech on alienation. So I went along to that, and it was good. Yeah, like I mean, Alex Salmond did speak really left wing, and it came to the question and answer session, and I got up and I asked the question. Like, I mean, I'm quite interested, obviously, in trade unionism, and I asked him about the anti-trade union legislation in Britain. I mean, that really, really chokes a lot of trade unions into being able to take action. So I asked him if there was any, you know, space in an independent Scotland to repeal the anti-trade union laws to bring democracy back to workers. And he said, oh yeah, there's no appetite in the Scottish Government for more anti-union legislation. And I thought, well, that's not really what I asked. And then the last question that was asked at that debate was an absolute belter, honestly, it was so great. The last question that was asked was, what do you think Jimmy Reid would say about you saying in an independent Scotland we'll keep the Queen? And honestly, you could hear this like sharp intake of breath, like everyone was just like, oh. And you know, Alex Salmond gave a very professional politician's answer, which was, you know, change, and maybe we need to keep some things from the past so that it's a smooth process forward. Well, no, this is why we need radical independence, so we can say no to the Queen, no to anti-trade union legislation, so that we can say the things that they can't say. And that's why I really hope you all come to the meeting on Monday, and thanks again for having me.
Thanks very much. I started off today at the opening opening of the Grassmarket Homeless Project. Now, I've visited them before, but they've now got an amazing new building thanks to incredible generosity. And the one thing I was so impressed there, no one there is regarded as a volunteer or a service user. Everyone who goes through the door is regarded as a member. And I think we really need to remember here that every single one of us is just as important as the man whose voice we hear constantly, Alex Salmond, and his vision is only one that I don't share in a lot of areas, from corporation tax to, well, you know, I won't go to Trump, but you know, we all have to remember we each have a part to play, and our voices are just as important. With regard to refugees, I think the churches have come out today and spoke of their abhorrence at Westminster policy. And, you know, we have so many refugees because of Westminster foreign policy. And I think Scots have always disassociated ourselves from the worst excesses. We have been horrified, and I think that's internationally recognised, and I think our voice will strengthen. The one thing I came away with this morning, the message, the one thing they said, I want you to remember when you leave the Grassmarket Homeless Project today, is that a lot of these people are here, most of them, in almost every case, through no fault of their own. And I think we as Scots realise that in a way that seems to be just bypassing the Westminster government's collective brain. My mum came out on the bedroom tax march with me. You know, that is the first time she's ever been out on a march in her life. You know, there were four of us when we were being, you know, afflicted by the poll tax, and I knew a revulsion, but she came out and marched this year for the very first time. Such was her feeling of powerlessness and the fact that this might happen again. So we really do need this new Scotland. I don't agree with the call for a currency union. I think we may have a currency union as a transformational stage on the way to a Scottish currency. And there are many reasons for that I don't have time to go into at the moment. I think it's taken us a long time to get into this financial mess with this rubbish taxation system that favours a very wealthy few. And I think we need to ask, what is money for? You know, let's take our time. I think don't do things in a rush and make a mess of them. Let's not think everything's going to happen overnight. It's not. I think it's more important that we get things right, and we really do get the kind of Scotland that we want to see at the end of the day. I certainly don't support the hereditary principle and would welcome a referendum on an elected head of state. Other questions that have been asked, you know, we need a written constitution, and I think the more people that we involve in writing that, then some of the ideas, some of the vision will come out. You know, the Yes Scotland vision, it's not very visionary, is it? Let's be serious. It's kind of more of the same, and it's a very, don't scare the horses model. And we need to make sure our voice is heard if we want to take more people along with us. Someone wrote into Holyrood magazine this week and said, this was someone a guy, he wrote in and said, I'm not going to vote yes in the referendum because the SNP's transport policies are abhorrent, so there's just no point. Their environmental policies don't, this was obviously one of his concerns, they don't convince me that I should vote yes. But I've actually answered him, I don't know if it'll be printed, but you know, I said, look at Trident, look at the dash for unconventional gas, look at the thousands and thousands of jobs we could have in renewable energy, look at the low carbon jobs and the kind of, you know, we mustn't conflate the SNP's vision with independence, and that's why our voice is so very important in this debate. We don't want a mini Westminster. I think that would be a disaster. I think Kevin picked up on it. In parts of France, they have, this might sound not, you know, I can understand why a lot of people would say, what, one councillor to every 200 people? But I think, you know, our best in Scotland is one representative to every 4,000 people. And we don't have very representative democracy. And I think we need to give far more power even to community council level. I think my own view is that the council tax freeze, you know, you might get knee-jerk support for it, but I think it hamstrings our local authorities and it removes power away from the people again. So I'd like to see far more power at Holyrood, but I'd like to see Holyrood having the courage and the vision to give that power back to the people. question. For some bizarre reason, we have the second highest childcare costs in Europe. Now, we don't have the second best training methods in Europe, unfortunately, given that this is such an important role. And a lot of people delivering childcare, mostly women, are incredibly poorly paid. But your average, there was a young family came to see me, they were paying £800 a month for childcare. Now that's some people's whole salary. So the STUC reckon that we're actually making women economically inactive. And they're not appearing on stats anywhere, they have just given up. And I do think we need to hear far stronger voices from women, and I think we need to look at provision, universal provision of childcare as a matter of course. There was a young woman, you do look like a very young woman, so I'm quite convinced you will have, if there wasn't the result we want to see this time, you will live to see this campaign fight another day. But you said, what would we do if there was a no vote? Well, I'd like to think that our input will be such that we'll have shaken things up so markedly that nothing could ever go back to being the same again. Yeah. And that even if there's not the vote we'd like to see, we will have made progress and we will be on our way. But thank you very much.